Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to the Odds Breakers, playing the odds NASCAR style and oval experience. I am your host, Paul Napier, and you can connect with me on Twitter at NASCAR Style Odds. This episode is sponsored by 5dimes.eu. For a reduced juice bonus, please visit theoddsbreakers.com/5dimes and click on the banner to get better lines than the average sports books. This week we have a great show for you with info you need to know before making picks. This is episode 7 of the Oval Experience. Each week we will look at track facts, history, trends, and what to look for before placing bets. Well, it was a little bit rough in Dover for sure. A rough race to watch as well. No passing, you got what you got on the restarts, and that was it. I ended up 2 and 3 and was a few units down overall. Kurt Busch really ran well, and honestly I didn't see that happening. Also, having old Clyde Chase Elliott go out early due to mechanical issues was even more of a head scratcher. Well, on to this week. This week, the Monster Energy Cup Series heads to Sweet Home, Alabama for the 1000bulbs.com 500 at the Talladega Super Speedway. This is the largest track on the Monster Energy Cup Series. The length of this track is 2.66 miles, making it just slightly bigger than its older brother, the Daytona Speedway. Well, here's your wildcard race of the second round of the playoffs. Talladega is the largest in the Cup Series. It has produced photo finishes, wild wrecks, and awesome racing. We will see large group pack style racing of about 30 or more cars within 2 seconds of each other. The slightest mistakes by one of these drivers or a spotter will cause the big one. So how do we best analyze picks for this week's race? If there is so much chaos and uncertainty, how can we make picks? Well, it's not easy. And my first tip, just like a couple weeks ago at the Roval, make your wagers small. The best car hardly ever wins these tapered spacer races. Just ask Justin Haley, who won the Daytona Summer Race, and I'm pretty sure he never passed a car on the track. Next thing you need to know is, it doesn't matter where you start at Dega. Drivers are able to come from the back of the pack to the front and vice versa in just a matter of few laps. So having said those things, just as I said on last week's show, it is still better to make your head-to-head pick matchups for wins earlier in the week before practice and qualifying. This has been my experience for sure, and with that knowledge is probably why I'm still handicapping races. So let's look back at a little track history of Talladega Super Speedway. So how did NASCAR build a track in Talladega, Alabama? Well, it goes something like this. Back in the 1960s, Bill France Sr. wanted to build a track that was bigger and faster than Daytona. He tried several different places in North Carolina, but local governments said no to that idea. He then shifted his eyes to Atlanta, Georgia, and focused west towards Birmingham, Alabama, and found an old abandoned airfield in Talladega, Alabama, and broke ground in 1968, and the first race was held in 69. Hey, happy 50th, Talladega. That first race was actually boycotted by many top drivers of NASCAR. And I don't know if you knew this, but the reason being was there was a significant tire wear. And with the excessive speeds and heat, there were several crashes and practices leading up to that first race. You see, there wasn't a union in NASCAR, and there still isn't. And Bill France said, that's fine. If you guys won't race, I will find guys who will. And he did. He was able to find substitute drivers, and a guy by the name of Richard Brickhouse was able to secure his first and only Cup victory of his entire 15-year career. So let's talk some trends. Last year, this race was dominated by the Fords, and in doing so, the first three finishers were from the Blue Oval gang. Also, 5 of the top 10 were Fords. Last year, if you remember, the Fords stuck together and pretty much ran nose to tail for the first 180 laps of this race. They truly were committed to each other. Well, the Chevys learned from them, and when they came back in the spring of 2019, the first 3 finishers were from the Bowtie Brigade, as well as 6 of the top 10. And as far as, and I've been saying that the Toyotas are very strong this year. So with that, it's wide open for sure. This is a total crapshoot. But hey, it's like this every week, isn't it? Some like to lump Daytona and Talladega together, since they're both tapered spacer races. Or, back in 2018, restrictor plate races. I can't do that. These are totally different tracks, and I would argue with anyone who thinks different. Daytona is more of a handling track, where Talladega is all about positioning and having a fast car. So my research will not include anything regarding Daytona. And one final point on this track, that realistically about 30 drivers have a shot at winning. This track will bring the word parity out quite a bit. Really, we can take out the advantage of the Toyotas have seemed to have had for this year. And also, because Penske drivers have been good, and also throw out the playoff versus the non-playoff driver debate out. So, like I say, it is wide open. So drivers to look at this week. First off is Eric Almirola. In his last 5 Talladega races, he has an average finish of 5.2 with a win and 3 top 5s. Up next is Joey Logano. In his last 5, he has an average of 9.2 with 4 top 5s. Along with those two, Kurt Busch has an average finish of 10.6, and Ricky Stenhouse has an average of 12 with a win and 3 top 5s. Hey, also, this guy is driving for a ride next year, and I sense a little bit of desperation. Oh, and in the last 5 here have been won by 5 different drivers. Elliott, Keselowski, Stenhouse, Logano, and Almirola. And I have a feeling this weekend, that trend could continue. So, on the flip of success, guys to avoid or pick against. These first 2 might shock you. The SHR teammates of Boyer and Harvick are averaging 22.2 and 22.6 respectively in their last 5 races. Also, 2 young guns, William Byron with a 23.3 in only 3 career races at Talladega, and YRB has an average finish of 23.8 in his last 5. A couple of more guys to avoid are Austin Dillon as well as Eric Jones. Both have average finishes of greater than 25 in their last 5. So let's move on with all that knowledge to this week's pick. First off, 5 Dimes has several matchups, and just as I thought, most are in a pick'em state. Very little plus money for the tapered spacer race. This week, I'm looking at the head-to-head matchup of Eric Almirola at minus 115 versus Lord William Byron at minus 115. If you remember, earlier in the show, I mentioned that Almirola has a fantastic average finish in his last 5 of 5.2 and is really overall a good plate racer. Also, you probably remember me talking about Byron in his only 3 starts at the track having an average finish of 23.33. Oh, and one more last stat. Almirola in those 5 starts has a low finish of 9th. That's getting it done, and so are we this week. And we are taking Almirola to win this head-to-head matchup in a small 10-unit wager. Hey, one more thing. At the recording of this podcast on Tuesday evening, 5 Dimes has Eric Almirola at 20 plus 2,200 to win this week's race. Could be a guy to look at in a small half-unit wager, or look at him to finish in the top 5 or top 3. That will be a bit safer for sure, but I like the looks of this after researching. Want more info and free picks for this week's race? Visit theoddsbreakers.com and click on the link for this week's race. If you like what you heard, shoot me a message on Twitter at NASCAR Style Odds. Hey, even if you don't like it, let me know what I can improve on. Constructive feedback is welcome. Thank you for subscribing, downloading, and listening to Playing the Odds NASCAR Style. Until next week, keep researching, keep winning, and have fun.